Howdy, it's Rosa, and there's a reason why I'm making this video, mainly because with the new development of Cross's character and what it could mean for the fandom and also the story of Underverse in general, I wanted to educate a couple people that I've seen a bit confused by his development and what it means for his character in the first place. It still feels weird to label myself as trans. If you didn't know, I'm a demigirl, I go by she, they, and I'm still trying to confront that identity of mine, so I'm not gonna say that I'm trans just yet because I haven't been able to figure it out yet. I'm still trying to vibe with it. But I will say I've been in the gay fandom for a very long time now, and so I know a lot about this type of stuff, especially since the research I had to do for Rose's first dream was canonically trans femme. But enough of that, let me get into explaining. So if you didn't know, Jael, the creator of Cross, which I probably pronounced that so terribly, I'm so sorry, recently came out and said that Cross had been applied to be transcoded for multiple years throughout her writing, and she was very glad that people were starting to realize this, especially with the newest episode. If you haven't watched that newest episode, let me get some warnings out of the way. There will be spoilers in this video. In this new episode, Cross had a confrontation with his brother, who was revived from the dead full of anger and basically swayed by Ex-Gaster. They were put in a trance by Ex-Toriel, where they were just kids again. Cross didn't remember anything that happened as an adult, even though he felt like something was wrong, and Papyrus was much like the same. While they were talking away from the rest, however, Papyrus called Cross Sans and also degraded him and calling him multiple names and seemingly hated him, despite having a smile on his face. Something about this interaction set Cross off enough to exclaim that he was not Sans, that he was Cross. Papyrus obviously was very enraged by this, and thusly they began fighting. However, this scene, as well as a scene of Cross running away, switching between him as a child and him as an adult, really cemented in fans' mind how Cross's story aligned with a lot of trans typical life stories, not being accepted by the family around you that you loved so dearly and them refusing to call you by your rightful name. Or those same people rejecting your identity in general, labeling you now as a monster rather than seeing you for what you are. Of course, this scene has more layers to it. It's a part of a continuing story of Papyrus also being angry at Cross for the killing that he did in their old AU. But even so, this whole entire plot around these two brothers are clearly coded in some way, and Jael confirmed that on Twitter, stating that Cross is indeed trans-coded, canonically. Of course, some people didn't take this too lightly, and there's a bit of a scuffle on Twitter for a while. You won't be able to find the original tweets of Jael confirming it, but she did eventually go on her Tumblr again and confirm that yes, Cross is trans-coded, and that other people who are angry about it should just get off their high horse and just leave the fandom of Underverse altogether, because they aren't welcome. So this is great, right? Cross is trans! This is amazing! We have a trans character in such a popular media. Well, that's not exactly what this means. See, Cross is not canonically trans. It's not canon that he transitioned from a girl to a boy, and he's not canonically non-binary or any other trans umbrella terms in the story. So what does trans-coded mean? What does that mean for his character, and why is this still a win for the trans community? Trans-coded in itself is for characters that are not outwardly stated to be trans, but their plot aligns with a lot of trans allegory or typical run-of-the-mill stories of trans people coming out and the social repercussions that come with that. A good example of a character like this is Dipper from Gravity Falls. Dipper is not canonically trans, nor is he really canonically stated to be trans-coded, though the creator of Gravity Falls has made a lot of digs at the network for not allowing him to have a lot LGBTQ freedom, so take that as you will. However, Dipper's story focuses a lot on his lack of masculinity and his insecurities that come along it. A lot of the characters say that he's not a man, they call him a girl, and he gets horribly offended and hurt by this. If you want to see the perspective of Dipper just being a little boy who is insecure and a teenager, and therefore he gets obviously insecure about being told he's not a man, that's more power to you. However, a lot of trans people, specifically trans masc people, related heavily to this scenario, especially when they were children, when they transitioned at a young age. The social repercussions that came with this transition can be really hard, especially if it comes from your fellow peers or the people that you look up to. A big plot point is Dipper feeling insecure that Grunkle Stan doesn't respect him or see him as a man. Therefore, Dipper hates Grunkle Stan when they first come to the actual Gravity Falls. However, we find out in this very same episode that Grunkle Stan sees potential in Dipper and is trying to toughen him up so he will be seen as a man and won't get hurt. Thusly, Dipper feels a lot more validated. It kind of gives the vibes of like an old grandpa or grandmother still trying to learn and bond with their children with the new kind of terminology, but still being stuck in their old ways and trying to help in the way that they know how. Times were different for Grunkle Stan growing up, and so actually helping a child that could be potentially trans is different for him as well. He's doing the best he can with the circumstances he has, and I think he does a really good job. Going back to Cross, because we're focusing a little too much on Gravity Falls, Cross being transcoded means that his story aligns with the typical trans stories that we hear from actual trans people or the experiences of those social repercussions, as I stated before. There's a question of what exactly his story has that are traits of trans experiences, and I honestly think it has to do with the new name and identity rather than the lack of masculinity. And I think it was written this way purposely. I think JL wanted to make it clear that Cross can be trans in any way under the umbrella. This includes trans femme, non-binary, demi, trans masc, whatever it is, you name it. JL wanted to leave that interpretation up to the viewer. So I think she primarily focused on the attribute of Cross no longer going by his old name, not wanting to be associated with that old person and having a new identity, fighting to be recognized by the people that he sees and cares for, but failing every single time. It's a very hurtful process, and it really stings. And when we do see Cross's old form, it's when he's at his most vulnerable. When Dream is like in his mind, I still don't really know what this scene is or like where we are. I don't know, but we're somewhere, and Cross is back at his old self, looking like how he did before everything happened in his AU, and only Dream gets to see that. A character who is canonically agender. Yeah, I think this was purposeful. Now, of course, a lot of us didn't realize this when we were first watching Underverse, because we didn't realize Cross was canonically transcoded. But the fact that the only person that has been able to see his old self after all this time is a character that is canonically agender and also experienced the taboo of gender norms and the trans experience it's I don't know how else to say it. It's great writing. It's really sweet. It makes the scene just so much more melancholy of these two trans characters relating to each other and understanding how hard it is for things to be positive out there. It just adds more and more layers to their dynamic as a whole that I really wish people will talk about more, and I hope to see that more, especially with this new development. Let's please focus on the fact that these two definitely bonded over them being trans, and Dream could have possibly been his full awakening. This isn't even including ships. I'm saying this in the most platonic sense. Dream being there when Cross was at his most vulnerable and reverting back to his old self and helping him find himself at the end, calling him by his rightful title, and being there, seeing him off, all these types of things. It's really beautiful. It makes the fight scene of Point 6 seem more like Nightmare is unintentionally being a bit transphobic and just trying to make him revert back to that old self and that self-hatred and depression, and Dream is being the guiding force to help him out of that. I don't want to say that Nightmare was canonically being transphobic in this scene because Nightmare is agender as well, canonically, so let's not say that. I don't think he was purposely trying to revert Cross back into, like, being, his old self and not transitioning. It would be funny if he was, but I think it was more about the depression for him, and then for Cross, he was having his trans awakening at the same time, and Nightmare just did not know this was happening. I like to think that was what was going on. So yeah, Cross isn't canonically trans, but he is transcoded, meaning you can see him as trans and his story aligns with the trans experience. He has the similar plot of trans characters, and he has similar feelings to those characters and therefore can be seen as such. So what does that mean that you can do with his character? Well, you can see him as anything you want under the trans umbrella. I mean, it's headcanons, guys. It's up to the viewer as well. Don't go and dissuade people for saying that, oh, I see him as trans femme, oh, I see him as trans mask. Cross is implied to be ambiguously transgender for a reason, so anyone can project onto him under the trans umbrella and see themselves in him. Someone who's trans femme could look at Cross and see their experience in him, and though he's canonically a male in Underverse, if they want to make him transition into a female, in their story and headcanons and art, then they are entitled to do so, and it's not undermining what Cross's story actually is. Cross is basically the umbrella of trans headcanons in Underverse. He is whatever you see fit for his trans story. And you can keep seeing him as cis if you want to, you just can't deny the fact that he was canonically written to be transcoded. It's up to you, it's what headcanons are. But if you see yourself in Cross and you're transgender, and you've been feeling isolated or lonely, and seeing this episode made you feel something, made you feel seen, then that's wonderful. And I think it's exactly what Jael wanted to happen. I think she wanted her character to be used as a way for young children who watch Underverse, or even adults, to feel seen in this character that they have grown to love, which I find beautiful. Though we won't be seeing Cross for a year and a half, maybe even longer, because I'm not sure how long it'll take to actually make the episode, leaving Cross at the standpoint he is now, with this revelation for the Undertale fandom that he's been written to be transcoded for so long, is a beautiful way to send Jael off. Thank you, Jael. I hope you have a good break.
It's not my fault every time you're feeling so bad. The wheel but shine is